Very aware of the rules, but to accuse a member of being responsible for the murder of women is very inexcusable. I'd ask the member to withdraw and apologize to the House.
The honourable member knows full well that she's not to attack individual members personally. I would ask her to withdraw and apologize.
Madam Speaker, it's difficult to apologize to something that is true. He's voted in favour, Madam.
I have another point of order. The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
When the Speaker asks someone to withdraw a heinous remark like that, they don't get to debate. She either withdraws and apologizes or you do not recognize her.
Oh, yeah. Elbows up. Elbows up.
The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be splitting my time with the member from Sturgeon River Parklands. Madam Speaker, we are discussing today a report from the Public Safety National Security Committee about guns and gangs. And frankly, we've been on this for quite some time. We began this study over 3 years ago. And boy, oh boy, Madam Speaker, have things gone downhill since then regarding gangs and guns and gun violence in this country. In fact, over the last 9 years of Liberal government, gun violence is up 116%. 116%, despite all of the announcements and all of the promises, gun violence is up 116% in 9 years. And you can see that every day in the headlines. And in fact, violent crime has doubled in the past 9 years. Sexual assaults are up 75%. Sexual violations against children are up 120%. And so Canadians may be wondering, why is it that their once safe neighbourhoods have become havens for criminals? Why is it that we keep hearing announcements from the Liberals that something is going to be done about gun violence, and yet it's just getting worse? Well, one of the reasons is because of the soft on crime legislation this Liberal government continues to bring forward. For example, starting in 2019, the Liberals brought forward Bill C-75. It was specifically to reform the bail system. And now you may have heard about the bail system from our police and from premiers across the country, because in the last few years, our police associations, our police unions, premiers from every political stripe have been screaming for change from this Liberal government, and of course that's been falling on deaf ears, Madam Speaker. They are demanding bail reform because it is exhausting our police services. They are unable to keep up and keep our communities safe because of the catch and release policies brought forward by Bill C-75. They are rearresting the same repeat violent offenders every other day, who are apparently going really without being held accountable under the current Liberal government. And you can see that right there in the legislation. The aim of Bill C-75 was to bring forward the least onerous conditions for bail. In essence, it made bail the default position for violent repeat offenders. And so, of course, that was in 2019. Here we are a few years later, and the impacts of that legislation have really come home to roost, Madam Speaker. Gangs and those committing violent gun crime in our communities are just getting off scot-free in the revolving door of this so-called justice system under the Liberal government. And we saw just that same year, in fact, Bill C-83 made changes to the parole system so that it was least restrictive. And again, some people may wonder, what do all these things mean? You know, these are legal terms. Unless you're a Crown prosecutor, it's difficult to understand. But for Bill C-83, I'll just talk about a little bit about what the Harper government was doing. And remember, under the Harper government, Madam Speaker, violent crime went down 26%. There was a decrease in gun violence in Canada. And now, of course, since the Liberals came in, it's been over 50% increase in violent crime. And as I said, over 100% increase in gun violence. So if you look at Bill C-83, for example, the priority for parole, again, this is violent offenders in jail with reason, because they've committed atrocities in neighborhoods, because they've hurt innocent people, because they've used guns illegally, they've been involved in gangs, causing crime and chaos in our streets. And under the Harper government, the parole parameters were as follows. The service, the correctional services, uses measures that are consistent with the protection of society. Number one priority, protection of society, staff members and offenders that are limited only to what is necessary and proportionate to attain the purposes of this act. Okay, so the number one priority under Harper, under a tough-on-crime government that saw a decrease of violent crime for parolees, was that the corrections services uses the measures that are consistent with the protection of society. Under Bill C-83, under Liberals, This was changed to the following. The services uses the least restrictive measures consistent with the protection of society, staff members, and offenders. So again, the first priority became the least restrictive measures. That is important in a legal context. That is signaling to the parole board, to the corrections, to judges, to lawyers, the priority is the least restrictive measures. It also facilitated, as we've heard, with the movement of folks from maximum to medium to minimum security. So from maximum to medium, for example, Paul Bernardo, we've heard a lot about this in the last year. Bill C-83 helped facilitate his move from maximum security, where he should frankly spend the rest of his days, to medium security. That was Bill C-83 that further permitted actions like that. And so these are the bills that have an impact. You know, we've debated them. The Conservatives fiercely fought these bills. We said this was going to happen, and of course, it did happen. And then since I've been elected, Bill C-5 passed in 2022. This astoundingly had soft on crime measures for criminals committing violent acts with guns. It removed mandatory prison time, mandatory jail time, for individuals that committed drive-by shootings, for example, robbery with a gun, extortion with a gun, discharging a firearm with intent to injure, using a firearm in a commission of offense. All of these things had mandatory prison time. You did this horrible crime, you endangered your neighborhood and your community, you were going to jail, for sure. You're being removed from society for a while, rightfully so. But Bill C-5 took away that requirement, and in fact codified house arrest for a number of offenses, like sexual assault. So again, you can rape someone and serve your sentence in the comforts of your home. That is the priority of the Liberal government, Madam Speaker. Bill after bill after bill, making parole easier to get for violent offenders, making bail easier to get for violent offenders, having less accountability and less jail time for people who commit gun crime. And now we have police associations across the country calling out the Liberal government for their lack of action. Actually, that's not true. They have done a lot of things, haven't they? They have done a lot of things on guns. But what they haven't done is gone after the people responsible for gun violence. They've gone after people like me, like the colleagues behind me, law-abiding citizens with firearms, something that's been in Canada since the inception of Canada. Part of our heritage of hunting and sport shooting and competing in the Olympics, representing national pride. That's been the target for Liberals over the last 9 years. People like us, people innocent, law-abiding Canadians who, in fact, are the least likely to commit crime. And why is that? Well, they're heavily vetted by the RCMP. They're tested. They're trained. We should take pride in our system that ensures that only lawful, responsible people can own firearms. That's how it should be. And yet those people have been the target and the punching bag repeatedly by the Liberal government. Over and over, they fought election platforms targeting these people. Our hunters, Grandpa Joe and his hunting rifle, have been the #1 target of the Liberal government over the last 9 years. Meanwhile, gang violence is up, violent crime is up, gun violence is up. Legislation after legislation coming after lawful gun owners. That's going to cost the taxpayer billions of dollars. In fact, we know now that so far their so-called buyback program, which again is a misnomer because they're not buying back anything, they're confiscating lawfully owned property from lawful Canadians. So their confiscation regime has not taken one firearm from the hands of criminals, not one, has already cost the taxpayer $100 million. And it is purported to cost, when all is said and done, as high as $6 billion to come after Grandpa Joe, while they, with their legislation, let criminals just in and out of jail, in and out of jail. In fact, no jail time in many circumstances, and out early if you finally do get to jail for committing violent gun crime. That is the priorities of the Liberal government. That is why we are in a situation today where, for example, if you live in Brampton, every single day you're seeing headlines. And the police who are on the front lines of this, risking their lives every day to protect society, saying goodbye to their families in the morning and praying that they come home. They have to face these gangbangers every day. They know them on a first-name basis because they've arrested them so many times. And what are the police saying? Well, 85% minimum of these firearms and their handguns smuggled in from the United States are being used in crimes. That's where the problem is coming from. Violent criminals smuggling guns into Canada from the United States. We need to do better at our border. We need to ensure that police are being invested in. We need to ensure there's legislative tools put in place that finally hold these criminals accountable after they've gone off scot-free in the last 9 years, Madam Speaker. Ultimately, Madam Speaker, we have a lot of work to do should the Conservatives get into government in the next number of months. The priority number one is going to be to stop the crime and, of course, cut taxes and finally make life more affordable. But stopping the crime is going to be a top priority for this government, finally holding criminals accountable, Madam Speaker. That is our mission, and we will fulfill that for communities and keep them safe, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Questions and comments, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Wow, Madam Speaker, we just heard what it is that the leader of the Conservative Party has instructed his Conservative caucus to talk about crime in our communities. And it's consistent with much of the misleading information that the Conservative Party puts on social media virtually every day. The bill in which the member is so critical of, the bail bill, is the bail bill in which the Conservative Party actually voted in favor of. It's the very same bail bill in which we had provinces in all regions of the country support, Madam Speaker. I'm wondering if the member can just reflect in terms of whether or not the Conservative Party today, because obviously it might have taken a flip-flop on this, still supports the bail reform legislation that was brought forward by the government not that long ago. The bail reform bill in which she herself, Madam Speaker, voted in favor of.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Unfortunately, the member from Winnipeg North was not listening to my remarks. I was talking about Bill C-75 passed by the Liberals in support with the NDP. In 2019. That is what caused all of the mayhem that police are now having to deal with. What he's talking about is Bill C-48. Bill C-48 was a 7-page bill in contrast to Bill C-75 that was 200 pages. A measly effort for the Liberals to say they were doing something about bail. That passed well over a year ago, and it obviously has done nothing to help. And in fact, if he doesn't believe me, he's saying I'm spreading misinformation. Why don't we hear from the Toronto Police? I'll just conclude on this, Madam Speaker. This is what the Toronto Police Association, which represents 8,000 police officers, says this. Our communities are experiencing a 45% increase in shootings, a 62% increase in gun-related homicides compared to last year. What difference does your handgun ban make when 85% of guns seized by our members can be sourced to the United States? Your statements are out of touch and offensive to victims of crime and police officers everywhere. That's what the police say.
The member for Timmins James Bay.
Well, talk about they think people are soft in the head when they figure people have no memory. When Tony Clement stole $50 million of border security money to buy gazebos in his riding, left us open to handguns coming in. When Stephen Harper cut 1,100 CBSA positions to allow handguns in. When he cut the crime prevention programs under Stephen Harper. This party has manipulated and falsified information to scare people while they supported criminals and while Tony Clement was taking money that should have protected people to buy fake boats and create fake lakes all across Muskoka. And hey, he didn't even get reelected.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul, a brief answer.
It's really interesting to see the arrogant tone from that member when every step of the way he's voted in favor of soft on crime legislation that's cost the lives of women, children, and innocent people across this country because of his efforts to support the Liberals, Madam Speaker.
Order. The Honourable Member for Timmins James Bay.
Madam Speaker is very aware of the rules, but accuse a member of being responsible for the murder of women is very inexcusable. I'd ask the member to withdraw and apologize to the House.
The Honourable Member knows full well that she's not to attack individual members personally. I would ask her to withdraw and apologize.
Madam Speaker, it's difficult to apologize
I
to
have another
something that
point.
is true. He's voted in favor, Madam.
I have another point of order. The Honourable Member for Timmins James Bay.
When the Speaker asks someone to withdraw a heinous remark like that, they don't get to debate. She either withdraws and apologizes or you do not recognize her.
Again, I would ask, I have another point of order. The Honourable Member for North Okanagan-Shuswap.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe if you check the records, you'll find that the member from Kildonan, I believe it's Kildonan St. Paul, said that the member voted for legislation that caused. She didn't say that he caused. I believe you need to check the record on this. Thank you.
One more point of order. The honourable for Victoria.
Madam Speaker, the member accused another member in this House of being responsible for the deaths of women and children. That is inexcusable. The member needs to withdraw and apologize unequivocally.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Don't apologize.
The Liberals and the NDP leading a bill that led to the murder of women and children.
I'm sorry, I have another point of order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, and I sat here listening to this, and I clearly heard the member talking about how the honourable member from the New Democratic Party was responsible for the death of women, and that is something that absolutely needs to be withdrawn. It's unacceptable.
So I will allow 2 more points of order, and but at the end of the day, given the information that's going back and forth about what was exactly said, I will take the time to review the tape and come back to the members as back to the House. The honourable member for Timmins James Bay, another point of order, and then I'll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a classic case of if people shout enough, then the quorum gets interrupted. The ruling was you asked to withdraw, not to debate. So under Standing Order 18, under House Procedure and Practices 13, you asked to withdraw. Now you're saying it's okay not to withdraw if we debate it. So I ask you to go back and check the Hansard of what you said. You asked to withdraw.
I'm sorry, the honourable mic's been cut off unexpectedly.
You asked for withdrawal, so you can't then decide later to say, oh, we'll allow this to debate. You asked for withdrawal, she's refused.
Okay. The honourable member for Skeena-Balclay Valley.
On the similar point of order, Madam Speaker, my point is around the procedure. Now, I've listened to similar points of order in the past, and the practice, if not the rule, has been that when the Speaker makes a ruling on a point of order, that ruling is dealt with prior to hearing other points of order. What happened in this case is that you heard the point of order, you ruled on it, and then, Madam Speaker, you heard several other points of order that were actually, some of them possibly points of debate on that point of order. So if you reverse your ruling on the point of order and do not require the withdrawal and apology, I think it sets a very dangerous precedent for this House. And we're going to continue to decline into disorder in debates, which isn't serving anyone. So I'd ask you to follow your first ruling and uphold the rules of the House. Thank you.
One more point of order, the honourable for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Despite the attempts to silence a strong Conservative woman in this House, I would note yesterday that that the Speaker in the chair did entertain from the New Democratic Party a challenge to a ruling that had been made the previous day. So, Madam Speaker, the precedent was set yesterday that challenges to a ruling could be in fact challenged, and it was the NDP that championed it yesterday. So let's let the member, my colleague from Manitoba, finish her speech, and if the other members of this place that are offended by the consequences of their votes, then they can enter into it in the context of Q's and C's or debate later on. But let's get back to work so we can stand up for victims.
Again, I just want to indicate that, given the points of order that have been raised, I took the honourable member's word because I didn't quite hear what the honourable member had indicated. I will go review the video and come back, given the points of orders that have been raised, and we'll come back to the House and advise the members what has transpired from that video. I hope this is good. I still have people rising on a point of order. The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You are given the authority to ensure order in this House. The comments that were reprehensible by the member from Culloden St. Paul require that she withdraw and apologize, and I hope you will stay with that ruling. It is a clear violation of Standing Order 18.
As I indicated, I will review the tape and will come back to the House either way. The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Thank you. No, I'm in respect for the House, I want to understand so that if the Speaker asks someone to withdraw, but if enough members of her party cause mayhem in the House, then she doesn't have to withdraw. So if that's the case, then we understand the rules of the House. So that's the ruling that we are working with under.
I appreciate the honourable member. As I indicated, I will, given the additional points of orders that have been made on this issue, I will endeavour to get the exact wording that was said during the. I will come back to the House shortly. We're looking into it right now. The honourable member was finishing up her response. And I would just ask members to please be judicial in everything that they say. The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul has just maybe 20 seconds to finish.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to end my remarks commemorating Carolina Hubner-Muckarat, who was shot by a man out on bail in Leslieville, Toronto. There are many, many, many women who have been killed by people out on bail, Madam Speaker. That member voted for softer bail legislation. That's on him. If he's not comfortable with it, then maybe he should do something about it and stop supporting the Liberal government.
Resuming debate.
Oh, yeah. Hi, everyone. Congratulations, you're spending more money on taxes than on food, clothing, and shelter combined.
How many kids did you molest with Jeffrey Epstein?
More than just elbows. These are Muslim values. These are Canadian values.
Anyhow, what are you going to do? Trying to keep you informed, Aaron Canadian Looney, trying to hit 30,000 subs. Help me get there. Thank you for watching this video. We'll catch you in the next one. Later, gang.